just want to express apologies on behalf of my director, Mr. Hitesh Vaidya. He was supposed to be here, okay, but then unfortunately he had to travel to Uti just a little while ago, and that's why you have me. Right. So my name is Victor Shinde. I lead the Water and Environment vertical at the National Institute of Urban Affairs, NIUA. For those of you who don't know about NIUA, we are the think tank of India's Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Right? So a lot of these popular missions that we see, like the Smart Cities mission or the Amrut 2.0, the Swachh Bharat mission, and so we kind of do the research behind it and help proliferate those missions. So one of the things, in fact, our core agenda at NIUA is to create some kind of enabling frameworks, some tools, with the larger thinking around urban development in our country. And since my work focuses on water and environment, we kind of focus our attention, our work, our efforts primarily in that area, right? And I just want to introduce one new initiative that we are taking as a country, okay? And this may be familiar to you, or perhaps may not, but I thought this would be a great occasion just to tell you about what the next 5 years in India is going to be looking at. Right? And this is an emerging paradigm in India. We've not had this so far. I am leading this project in association with the National Mission for Clean Ganga, right? And the idea is to help our cities manage the urban river stretches. And in so many ways, this is also connected to WASH, because as we know that our cities are mostly dependent upon groundwater. 55% of the water comes from the groundwater in our cities, and now there is a very conscious attempt by cities to move towards surface water. And when we talk about surface water, rivers are right there, so it's kind of really important to manage the rivers, in our country. Right? Next slide, please. Right. So I just told you that this is a new initiative that India is taking, right? And then for any new initiative across sectors, it could be transport, mobility, any sector. Typically, this is the impact pathway, right? So you first create an enabling environment, then you create institutions that are able to translate that environment into practice, and then finally, of course, there are the management instruments that help in that translation. Right? Next slide. So I'm going to talk about this enabling environment very quickly. Next. This is in terms of a framework that we have developed for Indian cities. It's called the Urban River Management Plan Framework, which is essentially a very urban-centric focus, and it was launched by the Minister of Jal Shakti last year. So that is the Honorable Minister of Jal Shakti, Mr. Gajendra Singh Shekhawat. So he kind of launched it, and now cities are now starting to adopt it. It's a very recent thing, like I said. So the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot of cities actually use this here. Yes, next please. Right, so what is this Urban River Management Plan Framework, right? So if I have to define this in a nutshell, it is an integrated approach to manage the river and its associated elements in a city sustainably, right? Now here, see the traditional or the conventional way of looking at rivers in India has always been from an environment perspective. Reduce the pollution, purely from a pollution perspective, right? Here we are trying to introduce a new narrative, right? So managing the river is not only about the environment, it's also recognizing that the river has a social value, it also has an economic value. And the holistic management of the river should actually address all these three elements, and that is what exactly sustainability means. Right? So I've highlighted 3 words here in this definition, and there's a reason for that. Next please. One more. Right, so integrated here, what this means is it has to be a coordinated effort between different agencies. A river cannot be managed by one agency, right? It's virtually impossible, right? So there has to be a very systematic coordination between the agencies. Likewise, the interventions that come under the management have to be a mix of planning and projects, right? Again, conventionally we only look at STPs, sewage treatment plants or drainage networks, but I think a little bit of a planning element, urban planning here, what I mean is urban planning elements also need to be introduced. Next please. The other word was associated, and here the idea is to acknowledge that a river is a system. So it's a system of course, the river plus the associated elements like water bodies. You have nalas, you have drains, and so on and so forth. So look at the entire system holistically is what we are propagating. And finally, one more. like I just mentioned, so the focus has not to be only on the environment, but also leveraging on the social and the economic value. Right? So that's the that in a nutshell is what the urban river management plan framework is. Next. Right. So this is just an overview, and I think just 2 slides away from finishing here. This is how the whole framework looks like, right? So it has the elements. So every city, when they start adopting this framework, the elements are based on the 3 pillars of sustainability. That is environment, economics, and social. There is a vision, that is for each of these elements. Then there are certain objectives, that every city needs to follow, followed by interventions, which are the actions that cities take in order to achieve those objectives. And then finally, of course, you have the monitoring and evaluation and the financing mechanism here. Now, if you notice here, I've used 2 colors for these boxes. Again, a reason for this is when we prepare a framework at a national level, we always want the framework to be applicable to every single city, every single river city. That's the whole point about preparing a framework. But then we also realize that cities are not the same. Right? Haridwar is very different from Chennai, or Hyderabad is very different from Pune. Right? So it's very important that the urban river management plans of cities, they are able to capture those site-specific elements. Right? That local context needs to be infused in their plans, and which is why we have these 2 colors. Next slide, please. Another one. Yeah. So the boxes that you see in green, this forms the generic part of the framework. So this is pretty much applicable to every city that you can think of. Whereas the ones in blue, these are the site-specific components. So essentially, what I'm saying is, like for example, if one of the objectives is to control pollution, okay, that is mandatory, or that is pretty much fixed for every single city. How a city goes about it is entirely the choice of the city, based on what its context is, based on what its needs are. So one city might go ahead with an STP, the other city might go ahead with the fecal sludge and septage management. A third city may also look at some softer measures. Right? So the choice of the intervention, and that's where the blue boxes come in. The choice of the interventions is about, is completely up to the city to do. Next slide. Next one, please. So now at the heart, you can just pull out the next 2 as well. One more and one more. Okay, this is just to save time. At the heart of the framework, is this 10-point agenda. I hope you're able to see this, try to put it as large as possible. But every city, like I said, those objectives would need to take actions against these 10 items that you see on your screen. And these are common. Every city, these are mandatory for every single city. So you see 6 of these agenda items are bucketed under the environment. You have 2 under the economics, and then 2 under the social elements. Right? I'm not going through every box here, but the idea is just to show you and present to you that it's looking at the management in a very holistic way. We have tried to address every single aspect, or pretty much every single aspect, that is relevant to our rivers in India. Next slide. Right, okay, I think I'm going to stop there. Can you just go back one? Okay, fine. Just one more here, very quickly here, please. So this is, it's one thing to actually develop a framework, but it's a completely different thing to then go and implement it, right? So we supported the city of Kanpur to implement India's first urban river management plan, and that was a newspaper clipping that was that came earlier this year, and the city has actually done that. So I think next slide. I think we have a picture of that. Yes. Again, so this is last year in 25th of November, 1 year after the framework was developed. So Kanpur became the first city to actually present. That is again the Jal Shakti Minister launching the urban river management plan for Kanpur. Looking at the Kanpur experience, 8 cities have already approached us. They need help in preparing their urban river management plans. Okay, we have limited bandwidth at NIUA, but I think the point I'm trying to drive here, and because there's a lot of private sector participation as well, is this could be an opportunity area. In the next 5 years or so, okay, this is going to be a big thing. I think the Prime Minister himself is very keen on rivers and on urban rivers. In fact, a lot of our inspiration comes from him. Okay, he has mentioned this on a number of times. So this is an area that can, you may want to consider in your plans, looking at how to manage urban rivers, creating those tools, creating technologies, We are going to announce a technology challenge very soon for urban rivers. Just to let you know that is a wonderful opportunity area for people to work in. Right? So thank you very much. I think I'm going to skip that. Thanks. Next.